This week, we're sharing a few of our favorite church stories from growing up, and I have to admit that I think for many people, such as myself, and maybe like yourself too, that we are always in the process of being thankful. Let me start over again. Yeah. Okay. This week, we've been asked to share some favorite church stories of the past. And I have a lot of those favorite church stories from the past, with my grandfather and father being pastors, my mom being an organist. And part of this process of looking back and hearing those favorite church stories now in these devotions is to remind us of goodness, of grace, of consequence here when we're storied with God in the way that we are as people of faith, each with church stories as well. So here's a few church stories of my own and my development as a young man, because as I said, my grandfather and my father are both pastors. My mom was the organist in each of the churches that my father pastored. So it was a typical Johnson affair on Sunday mornings and other times to be involved in the church, and it was where I was raised. The first story that I remembered was back in probably 1975, 1974, when I was 4, 5, or 6 years old, and my father was pastor at Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in San Antonio, Texas. And my brother and I, it was like our playground. It was like our place where we hung out, and it was the place where Dad and Mom raised us. Case in point, one day, my father got down on his haunches down to our eyeball level in the hallway of the church outside of the men's room. And he had these words to say to me, a 4, 5, or 6-year-old, and my brother Eric next to me, when he said, "Boys, you really only need to use this much toilet paper." So Dad was in the process of raising me and my brother at church. I also remember, too, a story a little bit later on from that, when my mother was playing the organ. This was overseas in Egypt where we lived, and Mom was at the keyboard playing the organ at St. John's Church, the Episcopal Church in the community where we lived. And this organ was an older organ that still had the hand-pumped bellows. And I can remember when Mom was warming up once, we went back behind, my brother and me, and started pumping the bellows so that she could practice. Thankfully, of course, the organ had an electric air pump as well that would keep the bellows full. But for a few measures, my mom let us pump the bellows on the organ rather than have the electric motor running. And I can tell you that when she opens up all the stops on the organ, it's incredibly hard work to keep the bellows full of air. So that's another story that I remember from childhood. And then finally, when I was in high school, a shaping story for me was when my father had the very challenging task of ministering to a family who had lost 2 of their children in a house fire. And I remember the night the fire happened, and I remember vacating my room, my bedroom, so that the father, the mother, and the surviving son were able to find a place to sleep in my bedroom. And I slept on a sleeping bag on the couch next door in our home. And I remember hearing them talking, murmuring through the walls that between the bedroom that I was sleeping in and my actual bedroom where they were sleeping, thinking, what are they thinking about? What are they wondering about? This tragedy that they have experienced. Really, what I learned about myself and about the church is community, care, love, grace, peace. I learned about Jesus and how we enter into a lifestyle and a life together, but we also find ways to care and love each other, even in times of tragedy too. So lots of very rich memories and blessings that I have in my past in the church.
Thank you so much for listening to this devotion. We welcome you to join St. Andrew Pastors every Monday morning at 10:30. We'll provide a brief devotion on a scripture passage and then host a conversation and mutual support. Make sure to register online. Remember, In This Together live edition, Monday mornings at 10:30.